Hey, what's up everyone? This is Robert, and for this final video in our Intro to Pro Tools series, we are going to break down some beginner editing and mixing tips. Now we'll be using the same session we've been using over the course of the last few videos where we did the how to record audio, how to record MIDI, and now we've recorded it and it's time to mix and edit. We'll start from the top. Our tempo, we decided to record at 90 BPM. Pro Tools defaults to 120, but if you ever want to change it, you go up here, this little red arrow, and you double click that, and you can adjust the BPM. Now second, in order to record to that tempo, we go over to track, and we create a click track. Now for us, it's already down here. Click 1. Here you can adjust your click parameters. You can select the sound you want. If you want to be able to turn on and off your click quickly, you go ahead and hit 7 on their number pad, just like this. Just hit it, and I'll hit it again. And it comes right back in. So after we finish recording, we get a basic track. Now I went ahead for the purpose of this video and made a really quick beat, just using basically everything that comes with Pro Tools, along with doing some audio tracks. As you can see, I have a vocal track and a bass track that I just quickly laid down, really just to demonstrate how to edit audio. So here it is. So there we go. We have a little loop there. Hasn't been looped per se, but we'll work on doing that. In order to do the basics, there's something that you need to have enabled. Over here where you have your tools, and I'll go ahead and click on one specifically so that you can see what your Pro Tools may look like at the moment. You're going to want to click the empty space up top. That allows your trim tool, your selector tool, and your grabber tool to all be active at once. The benefit of this is that it makes your editing process so much faster. For example, this little vocal loop here, I want to be the same length as my MIDI tracks. My MIDI tracks are in a perfect loop sequence, but as you can see, my audio tracks are not. So I'm going to go ahead and move all the way to the left of this audio track, around the middle, and I'm going to see my trim tool pop up. So I'm going to click and drag a couple steps, and there you have it. In order to dictate how it trims, we go over here. These are our edit modes. So this is set to grid right now, which means it's going to edit to the grid. And what dictates what the grid is over here. Right where it says grid, there's a little half note. That can be changed by clicking on it. So if I click on that half note, I can change it to a quarter note, and look at that, my grid value right here changes. I have it at half note, that'll work fine. And I'm gonna do the same thing to this bass track. And I'm gonna do it on the other side as well. Clean it up. Here, if we zoom in with T and R on your keyboard, sometimes what happens when we're editing is that we'll kind of prematurely cut off an audio file, and that's what causes clicks. So in this case, it didn't happen. Let's just say it maybe looked more like this. Well, that might cause a click. I'm gonna go back. Now, a great way to clean that up is by adding a fade. In order to properly add a fade and avoid making it sound obvious, I'm going to switch from grid to slip. Slip you can kind of think of as a freehand mode. This is a great mode if you know what you're doing as far as editing goes, but best to stick to the grid if that's what you've already started with. However, for doing little fades and crossfades, it's perfect because you can really feel it out. So if I go to the left of my audio track again, and I go to the top part of the audio clip, and I click, I can drag in a fade. Now we're going to do a small one here, and I'm going to go to the other side, because on the other side, the audio actually does go all the way to the end, and I'm going to do a small one here as well. And if we look at our audio files, you see it's a little mismatched, so let's fix that on the vocal file. Boom. I switched back to grid to do that, and I just clicked on the right side in the middle. So now our audio tracks are edited, and they take up the exact right amount of space that we want. So let's listen to our loop again. That's great, right? It's grooving, but it's just not long enough. So what do we do about that? Well, let's select everything. So I'm going to click then shift click on each audio file. And I'm gonna hit Command D, and boom, we just copied everything over in that space. I'm gonna hit it 2 more times. So now we got 4 loops of it. Ooh, I just realized my drums are out. This is a great example of why Pro Tools ain't the best. Look at that, it's gonna work. Yeah. My drums weren't working, and this is kind of one of the problems with MIDI and Pro Tools, is that sometimes your MIDI will just drop out. Things will just kind of go gray, and that's what happened. And I realized right now I wasn't hearing my drums. Solution to that, because you will run into this kind of thing every once in a while, just right click and duplicate. So now with my other track, I can right click and delete, or right click and hide and make inactive. Hide and make inactive is basically what it sounds like. You hide the track and you make it inactive. It doesn't really work or do anything in your session. I have a habit of doing that because my professors back at audio school, they just swore by doing that more often than deleting, because they just thought, well, what if I do need that thing? Force a habit. You don't need to do it. I do it. Whatever works for you is always best. So now that we have our edit, we have our loop, let's access the mixer. I'm going to go Command plus, and here we have it. As you can see, we have all of our tracks laid out with faders, and we have our plugins. I put some plugins on. I'll go through that in a second. The way I've always been taught to mix is really mixing in the context of something like an actual analog mixing board. And that is by turning every single element down and mixing from the bottom up. We tend to mix starting at unity, but we only have this much space here. And you'll realize pretty quickly that you're going to run out of space. And then when you go to your master, you're going to realize that you're clipping a lot. And this is digital sound. Our headroom is kind of infinite. We don't really deal with noise. So if you're mixing quietly, it could always be turned up without worrying about how noisy it may be. So we're going to start from the bottom, and I'm just going to do a quick mix. Now, I didn't turn down my MIDI track because MIDI is just information. It's not really doing anything. My MIDI track is going into my lead. So here we go. So I think that's good right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my plugins. If you wanted to open a plugin, you click on an empty insert slot. And this is either on the mixer window or the edit window. And you can go through your categories here, or you can go through the actual companies you have. You'll have Avid for sure, and you should have Air as well. I stuck to stock plugins for this. So I pulled up the EQ7. I did some moves here. Over on the bass track, we have the EQ. We have one of my favorite bass amps that comes free with Pro Tools, Sans amp. Just a really good DI, and I got some compression going. I do the same thing for the drums. This is expand. I'm just playing a hip hop loop. Over on the synth, also got expand, and just using another patch. On my lead, so-called lead, really it's the chords, just things changed as we started recording. I'm using a free Contact library, hybrid keys, with the blend all the way to A, and no reverb because we're gonna put our own reverb.